Hello, Tansei Anin. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. The Trudeau government said this week they are introducing amendments to the criminal code. Dubbed Milgaard's Law after David Milgaard, who spent 23 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, the amendments create an independent commission to review miscarriage of justice applications. According to media reports, there were 62 such applications last year. Just one was completed. They are currently reviewed by the Department of Justice, but the process has been criticized for being too slow, lacking independence, and underrepresenting Indigenous, Black, and other minorities. James Lockyer is a lawyer with Innocence Canada. He says the amendments could be a major step.
We've been advocating for an independent body to look at wrongful conviction claims. First of all, the fact that it's been the Minister of Justice up to now is bound to put off people applying. If you imagine you've been wrongly convicted, it's like the fox going to the hounds, in a way, is how you might view it.
A Manitoba man convicted in a triple homicide more than 25 years ago may have a new trial. In 1997, Robert Sanderson was one of 3 men convicted in the grisly slaying of 3 rival gang members. On Monday, Justice Minister David Lametti said via a press release he has referred the case of Mr. Robert Sanderson to the Manitoba Court of Appeal for a new appeal from conviction pursuant to the conviction review provisions of the Criminal Code. Ron Dalton is Executive Director of Innocence Canada. We spoke to him about Robert Sanderson's case earlier this week. Ron, hello and welcome to our show. What can you tell us about Robert Sanderson's case?
I can tell you that Mr. Sanderson has been convicted for the last 27 years of a triple murder, and he spent 25 of those years incarcerated inside of a penitentiary. He's been out on day parole for the last year and a half, but like everyone serving a life sentence, he continues to serve his sentence whether he's in the community or in the prison. A life sentence in this country is literally that. It lasts until the day you die.
Now, why did you apply for the ministerial review?
Well, Mr. Sanderson approached our organization, as many convicted people do, and asked us to have a look at his case. Unfortunately, we're a small nonprofit organization, so we often have a wait list before we can even get to someone's case. And we've been working on Rob's case for the last 10 years. We actually submitted an application to the Federal Justice Minister in 2017. So that's 5.5 years ago, and it's taken that long for the minister to review the case and come to the conclusion that there's a likelihood that there's been a miscarriage of justice in this case. The minister hasn't determined that Mr. Sanderson is innocent or guilty and should go back to prison, but what he has done is taking the step of referring the case back to the Manitoba Court of Appeal and asking them to have a second, closer look at it.
Well, on that note, how does Minister Lametti's announcement today affect things going forward?
Well, from our perspective and from Mr. Sanderson's perspective, it's a positive development. The minister could have said, we reviewed the case and we don't think there's any merit to your claim of innocence, and Mr. Sanderson would be left with no further recourse. That could still happen at the Court of Appeal, but at least it's going to the Court of Appeal with the additional fresh evidence that we've provided to the minister and the minister's conclusion that there's a likelihood that there's been a miscarriage of justice. So it's a stronger case going back to the Court of Appeal than when they first looked at it 23 or 24 years ago.
And last one for you here, Ron. What's next? What's next?
What's next is just like any other appeal, our organization will file a factum or a statements of facts and legal jurisprudence to the Court of Appeal. The Crown will respond with their own factum and their own arguments. There'll likely be oral hearings in front of the Court of Appeal, and then the members of the Court of Appeal will take a few months likely to review the matter, write a decision, and hopefully within the next year, Mr. Sanderson will get a decision from them, and with any luck at all, it'll be a decision declaring him innocent.
Well, we'll certainly be watching. Ron, we appreciate the time and the insight into this.
Okay, well, thanks to you and your listeners. It helps to keep people informed about what's going on, because when it comes to the Winnipeg Police Services and Indigenous clients, we've had a number of cases like this, and I'm afraid we have some more in the pipeline.
In Labrador, an inquiry into the treatment of Innu people and their relationship with the child protection system finally began after 6 years of delays. Angel Moore has that story.
This is Elder Joachim Nui. His drumming opened the first day of the inquiry into Innu children in care. The goal is for the Innu Nation to find out what has been happening to their children once they go into youth protection. Elder Elizabeth Penishu expressed it in prayer.
For a long time, Innu have suffered.
The Innu say displaced youth in provincial care have lost their language and culture, and 3 youths have died by suicide. For years, the Innu Nation demanded answers, and 6 years ago, the province announced the inquiry, delayed to organizational challenges and the pandemic. Lead Commissioner, former Newfoundland and Labrador Justice James Iglesias said,
"We understand that what we have to do today and until this inquiry is done must be the Innu way."
The Innu Nation, with over 3,000 people in Labrador, includes 2 committees, Sheheshe and Natwashish. Iglesias said,
"The Innu themselves and the governments recognize that the care of children should belong to your community."
The other commissioners, Anastasia QP, former Grand Chief of the Innu Nation, and David Levine, a retired professor of social work, will hear testimonies and identify recommendations for change, as well as investigate the circumstances leading up to the deaths of the 3 youths. QP spoke in the Innu language.
We see that in our communities what my child protection system has done to us. We see it in our children.
This week, the hearings will focus on the history of the Innu and the acts of colonialism. With $4 million set aside by the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, the inquiry is expected to take 18 months to complete. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, known as Halifax.
It's time to step aside for a moment. We'll have more news when we come back. Welcome back. Events were held across Canada this past week to honor and remember missing or murdered Indigenous women, girls, transgendered and Two-Spirit people. In Vancouver, the 32nd annual St. Valentine's Day March took place. An estimated 5,000 people, including family members, leaders, and supporters, marched from Main and Hastings on the downtown east side, where many women and girls have disappeared from over the years. Many carrying signs and demanding justice. Some asking for answers as to what happened to their missing loved ones. Assembly of First Nations Chief Roseanne Archibald spoke at the event.
This treatment of our women is a long-standing problem with colonialism and those institutions of assimilation and genocide who devalued our people and who devalued our women particularly. And we see this intergenerational trauma reverberating in our communities still today. And it's important for everyone to know that not only do we suffer from intergenerational trauma, all of us, 100% of us, but we also have intergenerational strength. We also have intergenerational healing, and we also have intergenerational resiliency. And that's what this march is equally about.
Over 200 people marched during a blizzard to remember their loved ones. APTN's Leanne Sanders has that story.
They gathered in memory of Winnipeg's missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people whose lives were taken in a violent epidemic sweeping Turtle Island.
Especially for those who have lost ones in the past or are still missing, it's us to show that we as women are resilient, and though we are hurt, we are still here, and we're going to be aware, and we're going to be proud and loud.
Organizer Anna Heward says the large turnout for an event during a snowstorm is indicative of how important these memorial marches are.
It shows that we're strong and resilient, and that despite some unlikely conditions happening, that we're still going to show up for each other, no matter what.
Candace Voke lost her daughter to murder just over 2 years ago, and her son soon after. Despite the blizzard and below -20 wind chill, she says nothing could stop her from marching for them.
How cold I get, I think of some of the girls whose bodies were found in winter, and how cold they must have been. So to be cold for a few minutes in their memory and honor is nothing.
Though there were many tears, laughter could be heard throughout the crowd as marchers found community in one another.
I feel safe here because they know what we're going through. A lot of families. We all belong to this club that I don't ever want anyone to belong to.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And the 18th annual Strawberry Ceremony happened outside police headquarters in downtown Toronto. It was the first ceremony in Toronto since the start of COVID. Wanda Whitebird is a Mi'kmaq elder. According to her, the day of ceremony was created as a way to come together in prayer rather than protest.
We want people to know that justice has not yet happened, and that it's actually worse than it's ever been, and that we need to get on it. You know, police need to get on it.
And we lost a very colorful person this week. Billy Two Rivers was a wrestler, an actor, and a negotiator during the Oka crisis. He died a week ago at home in Ganawage, Here's Tom Fenario with a look back at a remarkable life.
Over here, this is one of the outfits that I wore when I was wrestling.
The name Billy Two Rivers is famous the world over, mainly for longtime wrestling fans who remember his 24 years in the ring.
So you never played a bad guy?
No.
Okay.
I didn't have a choice. They loved me.
Yeah.
No.
Two Rivers made his debut in 1953 after being trained by fellow Mohawk wrestler Don Eagle. He combined a fierce wrestling style with colorful regalia to travel the world. The United Kingdom, Japan, the United States all came out to cheer him on. Well, most of them. Right before a match in Hanover, Germany, a spectator criticized Two Rivers for wearing an inauthentic, pan-Indigenous outfit. Two Rivers went on to explain that even though he's Mohawk, he was proud to wear boots made by the Huron-Wendat and a headdress gifted to him by the Blood Tribe in Alberta.
He said, "What is this?" He says, "You're not." He says, "You're not Indian. What are you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Indian. I'm a native North American Indian." He says, "Well, what do you dress like this for?" I says, "Because I'm an ambassador and I represent the people across the country."
But being an ambassador wasn't enough to make him feel safe when it came to wrestling in places like Belfast during the late 60s.
At night, the soldiers would come out with dark faces. They'd stand in a corner not to be seen, waiting for the rebels or something. And the greatest concern I had is that they're going to put a bomb underneath the ring or something, you know.
That wouldn't be the last time in his life Two Rivers would end up in a militarized zone.
Got a call about 5:30, almost 6 o'clock. And it was Joe, and he says, "Billy," he says, "the bridge is blocked." I said, "What?" He says, "Yeah," he says, "the Mercier Bridge is blocked."
After ending his wrestling career in the mid-70s, Two Rivers became a council chief for the Mohawk Council of Ganawage. He was among the leadership group charged with brokering peace after Ganawage barricaded the Mercier Bridge in support of Ganasatake during the Oka crisis. And despite having traveled the world over, the summer of '90 was witness to the worst act of racism he ever saw, right next door to his own community in Montreal. In what's become known as the Roxit Whiskey Trench Incident, a convoy of Mohawk women, children, and elders leaving Kahnawake were stoned in their cars.
The fellows going around to the different businesses that were there and says, come on out and let's stop these Indians, these people. They didn't care.
After 20 years on council, Two Rivers retired in 1998. Since then, he's done acting in films and shows like Mohawk Girls, had a photo of himself used on the cover of a Van Morrison album, first without his permission before they settled out of court, and served as an elder for the Assembly of First Nations. But most of all, Two Rivers is proud of his 9 grandchildren, many of whom speak Kanien'kehá:ka, the Mohawk language, with him. It also appears that they have inherited his athleticism.
I just want to point out to you, I have a picture on there from a number of pictures where my granddaughter won her championship for Greater Montreal, I believe.
To say that Two Rivers has lived a rich life is to state the obvious.
I don't know how much longer I'll be in this world over here. I'm trying to pass everything that I know on to the next generation's job.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory.
I never.
All right, it's time for one final break here. Up next, a great love story. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. They joined the Bear Clan Patrol, in Winnipeg at different times, but with a common purpose, to help their community. But as Leanne Sanders tells us, they ended up finding love.
After meeting briefly in 2020, it would be months before activists Melissa Normand and George Robinson saw each other again, their shifts walking with Bear Clan Patrol never quite matching up. Until George put out a call for walkers on a Bear Clan Facebook page on July 31st, 2021, and Melissa answered.
2 gentlemen from Fort McMurray that were doing a walkthrough for our 215 going to Ottawa, and I was like, who is this guy? What is he doing on our page? Because I've been a regular member for many years and know of everyone, and didn't recognize his name, and pulled it up and went, oh, it's him.
But Melissa was cautious.
I actually offered her a ride, and I kind of creeped her out, I guess.
I shot him down. I was like, I don't ride with strangers.
The pair took time getting to know one another. Melissa was busy with her animal rescue and Bear Clan, George working up north. But as fate would have it, they ended up falling in love.
September 18th, I asked her to marry me, and we're married by February 11th.
Yeah, less than 17 months.
They're so busy with Camp Morgan at the Brady Road landfill, named for Melissa's cousin Morgan Harris, with the rescue and with Bear Clan. Melissa and George don't know when they'll have time for a honeymoon, but they're going on a special Valentine's date tonight to add ink to their matching tattoos. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Cultural camps are a familiar thing this time of year. Here is Charlotte Moore Jacobs with an inside look at one in the Dehcho region of the Northwest Territories.
Mark Kununak is excited to try Dene drumming for the first time, and he's received a warm welcome to do so, learning at the week-long youth conference at Telemia Camp near Fort Providence, Northwest Territories.
Like just walking on the river and like the trees coming up from both sides was so nice because we got no trees where I'm from.
Kununak is 16 from Johaven, Nunavut. He's one of nearly 50 youth participating at the conference hosted by local NGOs and Indigenous governments.
You're going to tap here,
It aims to bring together youth from northern communities to share common histories, traditional teachings, and discuss current experiences.
I want to go out here because it sounds like such a great experience, and I really like meeting new people, getting to know different cultures.
Isabella Arafeliu is 14 from Ottawa.
I wanted to learn about the community a bit more, and I heard we were going to be bison hunting, snowmobiling. I was going to be trying things I haven't tried before, so I really wanted to be part of that.
The conference also looks to build relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous participants as they discuss topics such as reconciliation, allyship, and conflict resolution.
We had the elders pray and talk about their life experiences, and some people didn't want to smudge, but we were still able to watch the giving ceremony, I think that's what they call it, where they give like offerings to the dead. Yeah, we were able to watch that. It was like fun.
Located on the traditional territory of the Decho-Dene and Métis, youth are active participants in camp, completing chores like setting nets and getting wood.
Seeing what the youth what they best like to do, and being on the land where they can be very free, I guess.
Olivia Dobbs, who works with the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate, is here as a chaperone, and she's hoping to bring back ideas to her region.
I do feel like there's more traditional camps and stuff being presented, since also the First Nation School Board took over some of the schools, and so they're really trying to implement some of those traditional practices.
For Kununak, camp is comforting. He's ready to contribute to conversations around decolonization, and in the meantime, also finish a beaver hat.
A lot of First Nations went through colonization and just want to learn how, they learn to deal with their trauma and learn to forgive.
Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs, APTN National News, Telemia Camp near Fort Providence.
Well, Super Bowl 57 is over with Kansas City beating the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. But the game aside, this Super Bowl saw Indigenous people on and off the field making an impact. Before the game even happened, the design for Super Bowl 57 was done by an Indigenous artist. A land acknowledgement also took place for the first time at the big game. The land acknowledgement was then followed up with a performance of America the Beautiful, blended with American and North American Indian Sign Language. The Tomahawk Chop and Name of the Chiefs was also a focal point of the game, with many calling for a name change and for fans to stop the chop. All of that, plus the performance of Patrick Mitswing and other Indigenous dancers, showcased Indigenous people on one of the world's biggest stages. All right, that is all we have for you on APTN National News Weekend. Our website, aptnnews.ca, has you covered if you missed any of our stories throughout the week. I'm Daryl Stranger. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.